'Tis the season for H-1B lottery registration. We're recording the week of March 24th, so lottery has closed and we await results. By the time this episode airs, we expect results to be announced. With that, I hope all my clients receive all the selections and have the best of luck. I do want to talk a little bit about the context and environment this year for H-1B lottery registration. Of course, knowing that this episode will air after results are announced. So, with that, let's jump in. This year, I think there are clients that are being more aggressive than ever with submitting beneficiaries. And by that, I mean folks that we didn't traditionally see submitted as H-1B lottery beneficiaries, like humanitarian, work authorized folks, TPS, asylum folks that have degrees and qualify for the H-1B but historically are not tracked or sponsored by a corporate immigration program because they have independent immigration status for their immigration benefits. And this year, because of the uncertainty of programs like TPS or the state of asylum claims generally, companies are really stepping forward and supporting qualifying employees. When I say qualifying employees, of course, for an H-1B, the individual must hold at least a bachelor's degree, and the position must require a specialized knowledge, a related bachelor's degree. So, if those individuals are qualifying, companies are more aggressively than ever putting forward those employees into the H-1B lottery, as well as TN employees and L-1B employees. This year, more than ever, I've filed and supported H-1B lottery registrations for the TN employees, given the rhetoric and political climate around conversations about trade deals, especially with Canada, that the TN status, of course, is subject to the free trade treaty with Mexico and Canada. So if there were to be any dissolution of that trade agreement, the TN visa for Canadian and Mexicans would fall away. Of course, I'm not predicting that, but the rhetoric and environment around trade and free trade between Canada and Mexico has been challenging, to say the least. Also, the reason I see a lot of clients and even suggesting clients to support H-1B registrations for L-1B and even L-1A beneficiaries is because even though the company may have sponsored these individuals for green card, because perm and green cards generally are taking so long, the L1 status does not allow maintenance of that work authorization while certain stages of the green card are still pending. So more than ever, companies are putting forward more beneficiaries. So I think I love going on record with predictions. I think we're not going to see a higher selection rate, and USCIS will take its time in announcing what those selection rates. In past years and last year, it's about 30%. So I expect it will be the same, if not lower. The only competing argument, not to talk out of both sides of my mouth, is that while we are seeing companies be more aggressive with submitting beneficiaries, we're seeing also headlines of tech layoffs. And the reason I bring that up is sort of the competing argument to whether we'll see normal selection rates or higher selection rates is with tech layoffs. Tech historically is a high employer for foreign national STEM talent. If we see and continue to see restructuring or layoffs in these industries, it may be that these industries or these companies supported H-1B registrations for graduating F1s, but may not move forward with submission of the petitions. And so that might end up being that I think it's more likely than ever that we have a second lottery run. What I mean by that is that we expect that there will be, the initial announcement from USCIS selecting beneficiaries by April 1st. By the time this episode airs, that will already have happened. And then the submission period for the selected beneficiaries runs from April 1st to June 30th. With high levels of restructuring or layoffs during the 3-month period that companies have to submit selected beneficiaries, we may see not all beneficiaries that were selected move forward with petition submission. And then in July, that is where I think it's quite likely that we see a second lottery run. And that's when the government, of course, confirms whether all beneficiaries selected have been submitted. And if there are not full submission, then they run that second lottery. So again, going on the record, and we can circle back on this, I think that we will likely see a second lottery. Now, that doesn't mean that beneficiaries or companies should plan on employees being selected in July. I think, when we see a second lottery run, the rates of selection are incredibly low. So it's incredibly unlikely that if you're not selected by April 1st, it's unlikely that you'll be selected in July 1st. But there are signs that there will be a second lottery. So the chances are likely for a second lottery. So continue to plan on the contingencies that you're working through in your program, whether that individual may qualify for other visa classifications, or more than ever, I'm seeing clients look into international assignments. And I think, speaking of clients taking an aggressive approach, I think the maintenance of the talent is something that many of my clients are committed to. And so, more than ever, I'm seeing clients look into and explore the assignments abroad for their foreign nationals. And at the same time, plan for productive and efficient green card strategies, leveraging that experience and time abroad. So that's all to say that, by the time this episode airs, we'll have seen lottery selections. And this conversation was largely to give some context around maybe why we would see a lower than normal selection rate this April. And that I think there is hope for a second lottery. I'll bet all planning and contingency strategies you're developing for your program should continue, because we can't count on selection, even if there is a high likelihood of a July 2nd round. That's it for today on the Business Immigration Benchmark. Catch you next week.